Okay, Matt Benyon, welcome to the Live on Form podcast.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
So Matt, you are a founder of the Scramble Brand, which is a UK founded martial arts lifestyle brand, or BJJ lifestyle brand, and also founder of Polaris, which is a grappling promotion, the UK's premier grappling promotion, I'm led to believe. So fantastic to have you on here, and it'd be great to run through a little bit about your story, your Scramble story, and then your immersion into grappling and BJJ, of which I know has been a really interesting journey. And then obviously through sort of growing up in the area and kind of driving your passion into a brand, that's really interesting for me and for our listeners and viewers as well. So I guess, born in Bournemouth, I know, Matt, a little bit about your upbringing and how it started, and I guess where you first kind of got into any kind of movement.
I was actually born in Harlow in Essex.
I do apologize. That's
that's fine.
That's my faulty research online.
You wouldn't be able to know that, I don't think, by Googling it. Yeah, but spend most of my life down here in the Bournemouth kind of New Forest area. I went to uni in Surrey, and when I was there, I met a guy who was pretty obsessed with Kung Fu. My friend Theo that I lived with, and he kind of passed that enthusiasm on to me, and I became quite obsessed with it. And I ended up in one of the summer holidays between the 2 years of uni. I went to Australia because there was a guy in Chinatown that was supposed to be an incredible Kung Fu teacher. And ended up loving it so much that I basically quit uni and stayed there and did Kung Fu for a year and just bummed around. Yeah. And then that was my introduction to martial arts. Yeah.
That was your intro into martial arts. And how did, I guess, prior to uni, any real interest in, sports, or, no martial arts at all?
Actually, I did karate when I was much younger, which I was really into. But I have to say, in general, I hated sports. Yeah. Okay. I used to play basketball, actually. That was probably the only thing I was into. I was really into the NBA, which was a really weird thing to be into in like the early 90s in a tiny little town in the New Forest. But I used to go to the newsagents and buy the NBA magazine. And I don't know how I got onto that, but so I did a little bit. But in general, didn't like sports. So I'm very grateful that I got the martial arts bug. Yeah.
So tell me a bit about Australia then. How did you went there to meet the guy, and then you stayed there? So what was that induction like, and learning curve into what I guess is the culture?
I really loved it. I was completely obsessed with it, and I lived in a house with like 3 other guys that were also into it. So we were all day at the academy, and then doing chisao, like a kind of sparring drill in the evenings. That was it every day for like a year. And then the illusion was a little bit shattered when we were out partying one night, and like bunch of massive Tongans just beat us up. And we were like, oh, Wing Chun is bullshit.
Okay, so where from there then?
So at the same time, I had a girlfriend who's now my wife, a Japanese girl, and her friend lent us some K1 videotapes.
Yeah.
Which I got really into because it was a real spectacle. It was produced to a really high level, and the level of skill was amazing. So I got kind of into K1, and I had the inklings in my head that this was the superior striking art. What I was doing maybe wasn't that great. And then I watched all her K1 tapes, and I was like, what else you got? And she gave me Pride. And I watched that, and I was like, holy shit, like these guys were just superhuman, fighting monsters. I've never seen anything like it. And that got me interested in jiu-jitsu because a lot of the top guys were doing jiu-jitsu. And then I kind of went through a few months of carrying on doing Wing Chun, but also going to jiu-jitsu classes.
Yep.
And they were just polar opposites. And after a while, I think I realized that I'd basically probably be able to beat up like half the people that I used to train with like 6 months of jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
And pride was without being a genuine fan or fanatic, pride was kickboxing, Muay Thai?
Pride was MMA. Pride was
Okay.
it was the completely over the top, like it still hasn't been bested, you know, even though it's been dead for 10 years or so.
Right.
It you know, at one point they did a New Year's Eve show in the Tokyo National Stadium, which held 90,000 people, and it was rammed. Like there's nothing like it. It was just absolutely incredible.
And it was fought in a, was it fought in a ring?
Yeah, they had a ring. Yeah,
Ring as
but
opposed to a cage.
yes, they kept the ring on purpose because it had that historical kind of boxing had built it up, and you could see more clearly as well. And also the image of the cage wasn't good. You know, they couldn't sell a cage to the Japanese public. It was too rough, you know.
Okay, so you built up like some experience of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And you became, you know, you mentioned you'd done maybe 6 months of that, and already you'd learned that this was kind of the way you wanted to go. Certainly would have helped you in your self-defense and your fight against the Tongans, right, back in the day. So
maybe not, but I would have had a better showing probably.
Where from there?
Me and my girlfriend came back to England briefly, but England was a big letdown after living in Sydney, because, you know, every day was like the Harbour Bridge, the Opera House. It was just beautiful.
Yep.
And then coming back to my little old house in England wasn't that great. So we went to Japan, and I immediately found somewhere to train there. I wanted to do MMA, but I pretty quickly changed my mind. I did a few MMA classes, got kicked in the legs, I think I got my nose broken, and I was like, yeah, this really sucks. I'm just going to do grappling. Yeah, and that was it. That was like 14 years ago or something now. So
how long did you stay there?
We were in Japan for 4 years.
4 years, okay.
Yeah, I got up to purple belt, which is sort of the middle level of jiu-jitsu. I had a really good coach that would, because I'm not naturally sporty or competitive at all, but my coach was just quite old school, would just force everybody to compete all the time. So I was constantly pushed into competing, and I think in the end I won like the kind of regional competition, and I came second in the open weight part, and that was enough for him to give me my purple belt. And then I moved to England shortly after that, and purple belt was still fairly rare at the time. So I did a little bit of teaching, a little bit of training here and there. I wasn't and am not particularly amazing at jiu-jitsu. I just love it, you know, and I've been doing it for quite a while. So
when you returned to the UK, I guess, what was the scene like over here? I mean, I'm clear you can't compare it to what it was probably like in Japan, but what was it like over here in, what was that, 2000 and late 2000s, 2008, 2009?
Yeah, I think, yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, it was just starting to get going. Do you know Jeff Lawson, the MMA fighter?
Yes, I've heard.
Yeah, he's like a UK kind of,
yep,
just well known.
Yep.
He was in my local area, which was a real stroke of luck. But I think I technically outranked him. But and he's such a nice guy. He was very polite and always deferred to me, and was like, "Oh, is this what you would do in this position?" And then when we sparred, he just absolutely destroyed me, because he had a judo and a MMA background. But yeah, there were bits and pieces here and there. I did teach for a bit just because, it was quite rare to have a purple belt at that time. Yeah. But my own training I didn't really progress that much, because it took a while for the level to kind of get up. People could definitely give me a hard time, but I trained fairly hard for 4 years in Japan with a black belt, So. But now the UK is doing amazing, incredibly high level grapplers around here. Yeah.
And is there a natural, you mentioned that you weren't naturally sporty. Is there and I've spoken to a lot of guys who practice BJJ, and it's kind of the only sport or activity they do, and they've not had a real big background in sport. Like I guess if you go to the US, right, and you any sort of wrestling and wrestlers over there and high school wrestling, well, they tend to do probably football and track and other things, and it's a real kind of sporty background. Do you need to be, or does it benefit you massively to be a natural athlete when you're starting BJJ, or does that depend upon the time you start?
It definitely helps, and if in hindsight, I wish I had done a bit more physical training earlier. Now that's, especially now during lockdown, that's all I'm trying to do is keep my body healthy, and and for more than anything, for injury prevention, because you get put in very strange positions in jiu-jitsu, and you're trying to generate force from all kinds of weird angles. I mean, I've dislocated both my shoulders. I've had all kinds of bumps and bruises that I probably would have fared better if I'd spent some time on physical conditioning. But it is, if you go into jiu-jitsu as a really kind of athletic and muscular person, in a way, it's harder, because you'll have quite a lot of success at the beginning just using your athleticism, and that may well hold you back in terms of learning techniques and things like that.
Okay, so you're back in the UK. You love jiu-jitsu. It's not going to be your career in terms of sort of fighting prowess. So how do we get around to Scramble, this huge now global brand around the lifestyle? How did the idea start, and I guess how did you bring it to the world?
The kind of martial arts apparel and merchandise business was quite well developed already in Japan, and I would spend basically all of my spare money on buying cool like jiu-jitsu stuff. And in the UK, it was sorely lacking. So my first thought was to import the Japanese products, which I did for a short while. And I would go back to Japan every year and pick up new stuff and talk to people in the industry. I imported some clothing, and then like magazines. They had, a whole publishing industry around martial arts, which we didn't have here. Magazines with DVDs on techniques, interviews, mini documentaries, all that stuff. I just wanted to introduce that to the people here. But the margins were crap, and it wasn't really worth the effort almost. In fact, Adam, who you've spoken to recently, was one of my first customers. I remember. Yeah, he bought the DVDs and things because he was just as much of a nerd as I was. And then I think I had a guy in Japan that was kind of like mentoring me a little bit, giving me advice, and he saw some of the sketches that I'd done, and he was like, "Why don't you just design your own stuff? Like, take the ideas and do your own stuff." And I thought, all right, I'll give it a try. Like, I had a really awful office job at the time that was just like sucking the soul out of me, but it was a recession, so I had to kind of take whatever I could. And started developing some designs. I think I printed 2 or 3 T-shirts, and they sold. And I thought, oh, that's cool. And then I did a couple of hoodies, and they sold. They had a really supportive group. Like the UK Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community was very welcoming, and I would discuss everything on forums, a new release, and people would, it had a community. It was like a ready-made community that I could sell into. And then my school friend Ben came on board as well. He had a job that he wasn't really enjoying. So that was, I think, about 6 months into Scramble, Ben came on, and since then we've been a partnership. And we just grew it for a period of a couple of years, just adding one, spending the profit just on keeping the profit in the business. Adding another product to the line that sells a little bit, then we add one more product. Like beg, steal, and borrow with all the factories that they wanted us to order thousands, and we'd say, oh, we can only afford 100, and they'd moan a little bit, but then they'd make it, and that's how it started.
So when I guess you mentioned you did your own design. There must be an artistic talent there. So you obviously knew what kind of designs you wanted. Is that a kind of something you really enjoy, the creative element of it, the design in the clothing?
Yeah, that's been I think my whole life I've been leaning towards that side. Yeah, I'm not very mathematically minded, but creative writing and designing, I've been doing that since I was a kid. So I just look at things that I like, kind of copy them, combine them with other things that I like, and somehow create a style. Yeah. So
early days, you really drove the brand, or you drove the availability via forums. I remember forums. They were a real interesting way to build a community. They were kind of social media before.
Yeah, they were.
Before social media. We had one back in the days in natural bodybuilding, which was interesting. You had some really good people on there, top people, but then it became, I guess, unless it was moderated amazingly well, yeah, it could become quite I guess, like social media now, it could become quite nasty, right? So
definitely.
And you mentioned there was a ready-made community. It feels to me like BJJ especially has got a real community feel to it. And you mentioned in some of your, I think it's on your Instagram page, about being a jiu-jitsu counterculture brand. Just kind of explain that, because that's a real outlaw kind of rebellious mentality. Do you think that's something that threads through the scene?
Well, I suppose in the beginning it was we wanted to do the opposite of what everyone else was doing, which was kind of ultra aggressive, over the top, fight imagery. So that was the beginning of it. And now it's more like jiu-jitsu is like, I don't want to be negative about it, especially this early on in the interview, in the podcast, but it's a strange sport, and I guess it's like any sport, there's politics, and there's different kind of levels of the sport. There's this kind of strange top level of the sport that has there's lots of money in it. There's massive egos. There's just like anything, there is a slight negative aspect of it. I'm not saying it's all negative up there, but I don't think we've ever really wanted to occupy that kind of area. Okay. It's more like like a counterculture, basically. We don't want to do the obvious thing. We don't want to, yeah.
So early days, where were you selling the products? I mean, I guess
all online.
So the early days of online.
Yeah. I can't remember. We used what was the one before Shopify? Big Cartel, I think. Okay. We used back in the day.
Okay.
And a PayPal account, and I think it's easy enough, even 15 years ago, or whatever, to set up a business bank account, everything like that.
Yep.
I used to go to competitions.
Okay.
And bring a little table and put some stuff out. I remember.
Yeah, been there, done that plenty of times. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember once competing and selling. I got my ass handed to me, and then sort of dragged myself off the mat, and then went and stood behind the table trying to sell stuff. But like I said, it was such a nice community. Everyone was very supportive. I always sold quite a lot of stuff. Yeah, in person.
So when did you really know that you were really onto something with the brand? When did it really start to grow? And I guess, did it grow with the awareness of BJJ and grappling, or was it just something that you feel kind of pride that you drove as a business?
I can't remember the exact timeline, but I think after a couple of years of both Ben and I were working, our main job in the daytime, and then working on Scramble at nighttime. So we really paid our dues. It was a lot of hard work. And we could see the numbers were just growing every month. I think we had 1 or 2 wholesale orders that came in that were big for us at the time. We thought, like, shit, that's real money, you know. And then I think we just made the decision, like, let's just go for it, because I was in a job that I didn't like. I think Ben was making all right money. He was working for a bank, but not enjoying it. We said, let's just do it then. Let's just do it. So we quit our jobs. I think Ben came back to Bournemouth and he got a job as a security guard. You know, he was doing nights, like doorman and stuff like that. But that gave us the time to work in the daytime. And almost the moment that we quit our full-time jobs and focused on Scramble, it just went straight up.
Yep.
And within like a few months, we realized that it was pretty decent. And we thought, right, we're trying to get wholesale customers. We thought we'd have to cold call a load of resellers. You know, there was a few around at the time, but it was the opposite. Once we got onto one, they all contacted us. Yep. You know, other wholesalers saw the product on like Made for Fighters or something and went, oh, we need to get some of that as well. Yep. And then, it was exponential growth for something like 5 years.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been really good.
And I guess, you know, managing a business with a life, you know, we all have lives as well. I know you've just been out walking your dogs before our podcast, and you've got 2 children. How did you find managing that business and the exponential growth with, you know, also being present as a father and a partner, and trying to make sure that each part of your life is given as much attention and as much kind of, you know, desire, and you're there and present, because that's a notoriously difficult thing for growing businesses. And it seems like most people never get it right 100%, but I think there's definitely more awareness now to that, you know, that we need to try and do that. I need to try and get it right and try and get our life a little bit more balanced. But it can be hard, especially when you've got this exciting business growing, pulling you one direction, and you need a real big support system on this side. How did you find that through those 4 or 5 years of big growth?
That's a good question. I don't think I ever like dropped the ball with my family or anything. I always made time for them, and now especially I'm much better at it than I was. Probably, like you were saying, like in the beginning of the business, it requires a lot more of your attention. It's a bit easier now. I do remember one time where I almost felt like I'd had enough. With my second child was born, and the business was getting really busy, and I was like not sleeping, and everything was just full on. And I kind of handed it all over to Ben at one point. We moved all the stock to his parents' house, and I was like, dude, I just need a little bit of time because this is stressing me out. And then he took everything on for, I can't remember how long it went on, but it was enough for me to kind of get things back to an even keel. But I mean, I can kind of speak on it now. I don't know how I was doing it back then, honestly. It's just working hard, and then also making sure that I was spending time with my family, I suppose. Just trying to keep a balance. Now I have like certain rules, like my phone doesn't make any noise from 6 p.m. till 7 a.m.
Yeah, I tried that.
Best. Yeah, you got to do it. Otherwise, as like if you're the business owner, you can work from 6 a.m. till 11 every day if you're not careful. Especially if you're doing business overseas. You know, when I start to wind down, then America wakes up, and we're getting messages and emails and Instagram inquiries, and you've got to be careful, otherwise you will burn out.
It's interesting. There's probably now a growing understanding of the challenges of managing a growing business, but it used to be, listen, your business is growing, you're making money. What are you complaining about? But I remember in the early days of PhD, when we probably year 2, 3, and 4, we had that same amount of growth, and I can remember waking up in the morning sometimes and dreading turning on my emails, just dreading opening my emails, knowing that I'd have 300 emails, and some of them would be problems, and it would all pretty much all fall to you to solve, and that kind of overwhelming
Yes.
I used to call it sinking. We used to call it like a sinking feeling. You know, me and my business partner, he'd kind of send me a message. Do you feel like you're sinking? You feel like in quicksand? I'm like, yeah, a little bit. And my kind of solution then was just to take a day off the PC and a day off a screen and a day off emails and just kind of try and back off a little bit. And that's really hard when you've got a mentality that you're really trying to build something, you know, special,
Well,
you know, for yourself and your family. And
you feel like a day off is the end of the world.
Yeah, you do. I used to do. Yeah, I used to feel. Yeah, I did.
But you realize it really isn't. And I think we've been lucky so far. Like I've said it to my wife every now and then, and it just sounds horribly sort of cheesy and I don't know, arrogant. But on a Sunday, I was always excited, and I still am always excited to get to work on a Monday. Like, that's why it's the best thing I ever did, is to do my own thing, because that is such a privilege to be excited to go to work, you know. But the sinking feeling, in any manufacturing thing, there's going to be problems, and we take all the problems personally. Like, we still do, but at some point you have to remove yourself like from those situations. You know, I think we've had products over the years. I mean, we've been going like 11 years or something now. There's been some batches of products that were just no good. You know, no matter how well you check everything and how well you plan, things just go wrong. Like the factory stretched the cotton before they made the garment, and then as soon as you wash it, it goes back to its size, and you've got, you know, things that are shrinking by inches, and people are mad and incredibly angry at you. But you can't take it personally. You didn't make it yourself. If you had made it yourself, you would have done it the right way. But you know, you have to sometimes separate yourself.
Yeah, it is challenging, and it's good you mentioned the that kind of, you know, privilege of working for yourself and doing your own thing, something you're really passionate about. I always refer to my, you know, my parents. They never did that really. You know, my dad worked as a warehouse laborer all his life, and he really kind of went to work every day. He kind of grafted every day, and he had the team mentality that it was, you know, that generational mentality, I guess, of, you know, fair days work for fair days pay. But he never really enjoyed his job, and you know, he always says to me that, you know, enjoying what you're doing is a real privilege and an honor. So I think, you know, I think whilst it can be tough, you've still got that amazing feeling of, you know, not really answering to, you know, somebody. You've got that kind of drive to do your own thing, and that, you know, it's a real pleasure.
And it does seem like a generational thing. You said, like, the previous generation, they just worked really hard, and quite often in jobs that they really didn't like. And the thought of, you know, starting a protein company or starting a t-shirt company was just like, why would I do that? You know, I've got to go to work and got to make money. It's just a lot easier now to start. It's easy to start, really easy to start a brand. You can start a brand in 24 hours, no problem. But then it's, you know, keeping it going once things become complicated.
So why have your community fallen in love with Scramble and still love you?
It's probably a combination of things. We have a really good team of staff now that we do a great job, I think, of looking after the customers. We've got like 4.9 out of 5 on Trustpilot, which is actually quite important because it shows that we deal with every problem that comes in. You know, we get some customers that get mad because, I don't know, a package went missing or there was a stain on a t-shirt or something, you know, one in a 1,000 product that goes wrong. They get really angry, and then 2 emails later, they are a customer for life because we've replaced it, we've refunded it, we've sent out a replacement, you know. So we really take customer service very seriously. We also have, I think, a very natural voice when promoting the brand and talking to customers. Like, none of us had any experience in business whatsoever, so we do everything the most natural way that it comes to us. Like, I don't know if that's good or bad, but we're here, you know, 11 years later, still doing all right. So there's that, and then there's quality. You know, we kind of naturally, it's very natural for us to want to improve the quality of whatever we're making every time we make it. You know, we'll never stop trying to make our products better. That's another thing.
It's really interesting. Point two to me is something that I'm a massive fan of, and I think the consumer and the community, I think they see the fact that you're, as a brand owner and as a team, that you're, your passion for the movement, passion for the community and the sport comes through. And you say that, and it's also interesting, having no experience in business. Neither did I when I started, but I was a real target consumer. You know, I started PhD at 28. So, and I was a 28-year-old guy living in the gym, living and breathing sports nutrition, understanding it, understood the consumer, the mindset, and had that real kind of, I built up those years of being in the gym, training hard, and understanding what that person felt like to get in the gym and train hard, hit some PBs, make some progress, move forward, and then take that mindset and that success out of the gym and take it into their life and apply those lessons to the rest of their life, whether it's business, work, or family. And I saw how kind of amazing that was. And I kind of like to think that, that the community there kind of bought into my understanding of them, and the way I spoke and we spoke was kind of, showed that passion. So I think
it's being authentic.
Yeah, and authentic's a really overused word, isn't it? Especially in kind of marketing, where if you try to be authentic, you're not being authentic. I think that's, so much, marketing BS now around being authentic, and so much money spent on trying to be authentic. But if you're being authentic is free of charge, right? There's no money to be spent to be authentic. So, talking in the language you did without business hyperbole, probably warmed you to your community even more. And I think that's really, and I think that's a big thing for, for the modern day. I think the way brands are founded now by, by passionate doers of that activity, whatever it is, participants and people who live that lifestyle. I think is really important. I think it's easier now to do that, and I think that's the genuine authenticity around brands now.
Yeah, I mean, also, for example, I do 99% of the social media myself. So it's me talking to the customer. We haven't hired an agency to deliver a message to people. Like, I'm just writing stupid stuff on Instagram, and I think we used to advertise in Fighters Only magazine back in the day when Rob Hewitt. I used to write for them as well. That was before I got into Scramble. I wanted to be a journalist, like a fight sports journalist. I still sort of tinker with it, but I think they used to dread getting our ads because they were so dumb. They were so dumb. We would have made up quotes from people saying things like, "These shorts are terrible. You should definitely not buy these shorts. You should buy another brand shorts." It's just, I'm sure they used to groan when they got them. But yes, it was just us having fun. So.
That's a bit of kind of self-flagellation before that was popular to do, and now that's massively popular, right? Cause a bit of controversy, say your thing is crap, and then people are curious and interested about that. So you mentioned earlier America. What was the process to roll Scramble out outside the UK, and whereabouts are you sold now, and how did that materialize?
In the beginning, we had a big customer, or we had 2 or 3 sort of large customers in America that were distributing Scramble through their wholesale platforms. And we were getting on really well with one of the guys, and we kind of said to him, "Oh, what about setting up a Scramble USA store?" Which he did, and for a couple of years he did quite a good job. But it was quite difficult because we had a lot of products by then, and it was difficult for him to invest the time and money and attention into keeping everything in stock all the time. And then whenever we release something new, you know, we had to be organized enough to let him know that this new product was coming, and he had to be organized enough to get it all there on time. And for whatever reason, we realized it wasn't working out, and we'd grown by that point enough that we could get good courier rates. So we brought the US store back. So the US store is now domiciled here.
Okay.
And we just have really good rates with, I think it's DHL. Yeah, can't remember. And they, the package gets there in 24 hours, 48 hours. There's no tax to pay. So hopefully the US customer feels like they're shopping from a US store, you know. It means everything that we launch is instantly available on the US store. We do the same thing with the Australian store, but and then we have some partners that are kind of friends and business partners that have approached us and said, can we open a store? We have a guy in Poland, a guy in Canada, a guy in Japan, and a guy in Ireland, and a guy in Korea. Yeah, that's where we are now.
And they're all, you know, I guess, personal friendships that you've developed into being an arm of the business, or a distribution arm.
Yeah, or sometimes it's gone the other way around, but yeah.
It often works like that. So what? And then you know, so your passion for BJJ, growing your Scramble brand. So why did you move into competitions and promoting competition with Polaris? Tell me a bit about that, I guess, why that started, the history, and, you know, what it is really.
Well, there was a big show that somebody started in America called Metamoris, and somehow he managed to get millions of dollars of somebody's money, and it was pretty spectacular. You know, it was jiu-jitsu done in professional boxing style, or, you know, an MMA style, really over the top, big announcers, music, you know, stage, everything. But it was amazing, and we thought, you know, love to do something like that one day. I think we had plans to do a tournament of some kind. I started whipping up some graphics and getting a feel for it. And then there's another brand in the UK called Tatami that also make basically similar stuff to us. And we went to the European Jiu-Jitsu Championships together in Portugal and had dinner together and more than a few whiskeys, and ended up deciding to do the show together, because we realized that we needed to pool our resources to do this thing. And it moved along pretty quickly from then. And then it was hard. Like, it still is the first one was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like, mental breakdown levels of stress. I mean, like, I think 2 weeks out, we had this streaming company hired to do it, and they had a meltdown, and they said that we can't do this. They said, you're not streaming a competition, you're doing a sports broadcast. We're not set up to do that. And I think just everything was hard, really, really hard. But even now, we look back on Polaris One, and it was a pretty decent broadcast of a good event.
So what's the scene like in the UK for someone like me who doesn't, you know, I understand what boxing is, I understand MMA through the UFC. What's the scene like? You know, are fighters paid? Are there any fighters who just fight full time, professional level, or is it all amateur?
There is a well-developed amateur circuit, numerous smaller competitions, and then there's a kind of governing, like a SATS governing body called the UK Jiu-Jitsu, and there's a few, and they all run their own tournaments. Like in non-corona times, there'd be something every weekend on an amateur level, which is pay to play. We are the biggest professional event, and we pay everybody that appears on the show. There are other professional events as well, also paying people. People wouldn't, you wouldn't be able to live just from that. The sport just can't support it yet, but they use those appearances to seminars, private lessons. You know, they grow their academies, because we provide, if somebody comes onto Polaris, they leave Polaris with like incredible photography of their performance video. They put I'm a Polaris veteran on their seminar posters and stuff like that. So it kind of grows their profile in that way.
So is there any, and I guess from there, there's probably a natural, or for the best, there's probably a natural potential to then gravitate into MMA and the UFC. So is there, I guess, what's holding the top guys, you know, from the UK back in the BJJ space? What's holding them back from then, I guess, trying to move into MMA? And is that something you encourage, or is that, you know, do you try and hold the best BJJ guys and girls back in the sport, or is it just a natural progression that you're fine with and you see coming anyway?
I think the progression used to happen in the old days because jiu-jitsu only had an amateur scene. So if somebody was good at it and they wanted to make money, they'd have to kind of graduate to MMA. People now are making good money in jiu-jitsu. Okay. It's no longer a stepping stone to an MMA career. You know, you can make a little bit of money competing. You can make good money from instructionals. You can build up your academy. You know, it's a viable. Some people might disagree. It's a viable career choice, especially now. People are really struggling, but if you work hard, if you have success and your name grows, then you can stay in jiu-jitsu and make a living for sure.
And given its popularity, is there a sense of concern of dilution in terms of, you know, like any scene really, when it grows and becomes more mainstream, then, you know, do certain criteria become looser? Is it easier, you know, now to progress to the top level in terms of belts than it was, or are they still, you know, firmly held traditions around that structure?
It's one of the best things about jiu-jitsu, and it's in a weird way. There's no strict guidelines for progression. So there's like loose. I mean, the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation has some guidelines, but it's to do with, you know, the time served. But a lot of it is down to the instructor and also down to your performance. And it's quite well protected. It's kind of self-policing. You know, if you're an instructor and you give somebody a belt and they're crap, it makes you look crap, you know, so nobody wants to do that. So the whole sport is almost on the other side. Like, I mean, people are slow to give out belts because you don't want your blue belt to be the worst blue belt, you know, so you'll hold them back until they're definitely really, really good. Then they get the belt, you know. And there's so much amateur competition around that, it kind of polices itself.
Okay. The
level stays high because people have to perform. Yeah.
Okay. And outside Scramble, you know, outside, if you've got time to, you know, be outside Polaris, what are your passions?
You mean like in terms of sports or activities?
Any activity. How do you spend your downtime? I know you've walking your dog, so that's one thing. You know, for me, that, you know, my dog walks, I do 2 or 3 a day now. And it's just, I just find it amazing for that kind of clarity and real time to think. I don't really look at walking my dog as exercise now. Exercise for me is training, but I look at it as thinking time.
Yeah, definitely. Enjoy that, spend time with the family. But I think the best money I've spent in a long time, we built a little shed outside that's big enough. It's got 9 jiu-jitsu mats in it and some weights. And I've got a Bulgarian bag, which I really like. So I try and spend, I think it's basically every other day at the moment. I'm trying to do that. But man, especially lately, I just can't stop doing stuff. I'm drawing, I'm painting, I'm doing, I'm writing. I've got just endless ideas. I don't know if it's lockdown or something like that, you know, almost to the point where I'm going mad because I can't finish anything. But, you know, I've taken the pressure off of myself to finish them, and I'm just happy that I'm having all these ideas and then the time to work on them, you know.
So do you class yourself as as quite a restless guy? In that you're creatively getting drawn to different things
Yes.
all the time, and kind of frustrated that you can't do all of them brilliantly well.
Yeah. I think that's about right. Yeah. I'm just interested in lots of things, and then start working on it, you know, do all right at it, and then think I'd like to progress this, but then I move on to the next thing, and you know, but that used to stress me out, but I'm not letting it stress me out now. I'm just happy that I've got that drive.
And regarding your children, are they going to get into BJJ?
Yeah, I mean, I used to teach a kids class that they enjoyed, and they were getting quite good. You know, we went to a few competitions. I mean, at one point it was fairly serious. You know, we drove all the way up to, I think, Coventry or something, and my son was like right on weight, so he couldn't have any breakfast, and I was,
wow.
you know, and I was like, wow, this is getting serious. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, absolutely.
They did really well. Then I changed gyms and I stopped teaching because I really wanted to improve myself, and I found that teaching and things like that, I was just not getting better. So I changed gyms, and since then I've just been being trained, and I absolutely love it like that. But since lockdown started and we had this little gym built, we train fairly often. The boys are getting back into it. You know, they're getting quite tough. They've got a good squeeze on them. I have to be careful.
That's good. It's I think that kind of, you know, focus and dedication on it, you know, not to the point where it's, you know, crazy, but that discipline that comes with an activity or a sporting activity, you know, for young people, I think is massive. Just a little bit of structure rather than chaos, especially now.
And especially in today's world, you know, kids are, in my opinion, many kids are lacking that, you know, physical contact, the pain of defeat, you know, and then the being a 100% responsible for your own progress. You know, if you don't put in the effort, you're going to suck and you're going to get beaten up. You're going to feel the negative impact of not putting in effort. You're going to feel it very physically because the other person who did put in the effort, it will, you know, beat you up. I'm a huge fan of jiu-jitsu and that kind of sport for personal development. Yeah, I mean, when I changed gyms as a brown belt, which is, you know, one belt away from black belt. Been training for a very long time, and man, I got my ass handed to me for a long time because I'd been so out of the kind of competitive mindset, and yeah, it's not a nice feeling as someone that's been training for years to go and get beaten up by people that are technically lower than you. But that happens all the time in jiu-jitsu. That's one of the things you have to get used to. If I haven't been lifting weights, haven't been watching what I'm eating, if I have been drinking too much beer, if I've been staying up late at night, I'll get beaten up, and I'll, you know, it's like a lesson that you learn physically. So.
And how was in terms of the, you know, the scene and the top guys, how's the influx of new training and more functional style of training moved into the sport? I'm guessing maybe 10, 20 years ago, there was probably a really kind of, you know, a puritanical, we're just doing technique. Grappling and technique. Whereas I guess now, and then sometimes you mentioned the more naturally stronger guys would come in and, you know, almost bully beginners just because of their strength. So is there a growth and development like there is in every sport really, with more, you know, functional style resistance training and conditioning?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from the top level of the sport, even down to the amateurs, these guys are absolute beasts. They're in peak condition. You know, I think that the world champions in jiu-jitsu are just, I mean, they're real athletes. They're training all the time with the latest techniques, you know, the latest training methodologies. It's and nowadays, you know, if you'd say purple belt is the middle of the road in jiu-jitsu. A young competitive purple belt with a strength and conditioning regimen will kill a kind of casual older school black belt like myself, just because they're focused, everything's good condition, you know.
Yeah. So regards back to business, you know, your children are around, you mentioned 12 and 10. Is Scramble a legacy brand that you pass on in the family? Are you looking to grow it to a certain point and then live a restful life where you can get some sleep? and do your other things that you know that you've started and are really passionate about, but never really get time to do it because they don't pay the bills?
It's a good question. I don't know. I would definitely be happy if they ended up working at Scramble or even taking over one day. That made me happy. I don't. I mean, I'm still doing a lot, like every day, a lot in the business. As it's nowhere near the kind of stage where I can step back or anything like that. And I still enjoy it, so I don't really see any real need not to at the moment, except if I wanted to spend more time on other projects. But I still really like doing Scramble and still have tons of work to do, so it will stay like that for a while. And also, you know, we're kind of in a little town in the south coast of England. It's not really a place where businesses buy and sell each other. You know, we haven't got investors knocking down the door or anything like that. So, you know, I can't really see that happening.
So it's a real lifestyle brand.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you live and you build your lifestyle and your passion around it. It's a passion of the family. And you can see that carrying on.
Yeah, I think the kids wear all this, you know, well, it's all quite baggy still, but you know, they've got Scramble. They come to, or they used to come to all the Polaris events and usually fall asleep about halfway through, but they know all the athletes and they've been backstage and everything. Yeah, they love it.
Yes, and that's genuine authenticity, isn't it? Which is very different to the I guess, you know, the manufactured type. What's the future of BJJ, I guess? You know, do you see it continuing to grow? What's the future of the professional angle of the sport? And I guess, you know, how do you see that in the next 10 years?
We've been dealt a pretty significant blow by coronavirus.
Yeah.
Especially Polaris. We did 4 shows last year with like everything apart from actual corona tests. We did, you know, we had doctors on site to do questionnaires, check temperatures. We did everything except test for corona. We had 4 successful closed door shows. Nobody got corona, you know, but it was really hard work and not in a massive hurry to keep doing that. You know, we need everything back open. We need to bring people in from overseas. That's what brings the viewers, because we have a deal with UFC Fight Pass.
Okay.
So a lot of our viewers are American kind of MMA fans. So we need to bring those guys in to compete. But I'm literally raring to go. Like the second the government says you can go back to jiu-jitsu, I'll be there. And everyone I've spoke to, they're really worried. Oh, what's going to happen? You know, everybody has the same feeling. As soon as the government says go, we're going to go. So I think I'm not worried. I know that as soon as they open things back up, I think there'll be a massive resurgence in popularity of, you know, physical activity.
Agree.
Yeah, things like that. I think everybody's just waiting. We've all got the same feeling. Now, I went from training 2 or 3 times a week for 15 years to nothing.
Yeah.
It's been killing me, but I can't wait. As soon as they say go, I'm going to go. And I think everyone else is in the same boat. So I'm predicting, you know, a good year, maybe next year or towards the end of this year.
It's challenging because these things become a real habit, don't they? They become, you know, just real habits in your life that give you some structure and some direction and some accountability. You mentioned that earlier. That's what, you know, that's what physical exercise brings you, I think, more than anything else.
You can't fake it.
You can't. No, you've got to, and especially, you know, BJJ. It's a very, you know, you need to be in that flow all the time. It's not something you can go down there half-assed and, you know, so give it 50% and then get out. So it's I can imagine people are really suffering mentally and physically from not being able to get in the gym. So as soon as they're open, I can imagine I can imagine there's going to be a flood back there. I hope so. Anyway, it's a really big
I think so.
Yeah, it's really important. Matt, really enjoyed speaking to you. We're up on coming up to that hour.
Damn, I went quick.
Our time now. Yeah, no, it's been brilliant. It's been great to meet you. You know, first time you and I have spoke. I've been aware of your brand for a long time, even though I don't train myself. Adam's been.
I bet he wants you to.
Adam and my friend Ryan. I've got another friend Ryan who trains with Adam. Has been, you know, sort of just the way he speaks about BJJs with just so much kind of, you know, misty-eyed passion, really. I can see how much a part of a life and how much it brings to a person, other than just more, you know, simple parts of it, simple forms of exercise. You know, less kind of all encompassing sports. I can see what it brings to people, and what sort of part it plays in their life. So I understand the attraction. You know, the attraction is real to me. So I can see why it's big and growing.
You got to give it a go one day.
Yeah, well, listen, I've got time. You know, my mates keep saying that I've got plenty of time on my side to give it a go. So maybe one day, maybe when we get back in the gyms and we can do some physical exercise with contact, then that's my cue.
I'll come and see you up at Factory at Adams.
Fantastic. Listen, Matt, cheers. Have a great have a great week, great month, great year. You know, best of luck for Scramble, and best of luck, you know, for the competitions at Polaris when you can get back.
Thanks. I really appreciate the chat. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye bye.